YouTubers.
This list sucks. This list sucks. This list sucks. This list sucks. It sucks.
Happy Friday, everybody.
This is the terrible thing. This is the one bad thing about doing remote is we have no idea who should talk first. There's
I know.
No way to indicate that.
Normally we're so good because we can basically see who's taking a big deep breath to like talk first, but we're totally fucked in this situation.
We apologize, guys. Next time, me and Mike will coordinate beforehand who will speak first.
That's right. That's right. We'll talk about it. We'll discuss it amongst ourselves, and that way it doesn't wind up like that.
Yes. But anyways, thank you guys for joining us. We're back. This list sucks. Weekly podcast. We're here every Friday. You know.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
The deal. I'm Mike.
I'm JB.
That's JB.
Yep. Got me mid White Claw.
Yeah, mid White Claw. And obviously, for those of you watching on YouTube, you can tell that we are remote. I'm down in Texas. JB is back up in Iowa. But we're together again, just the two of us. And just the two of us. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
But definitely want to, like, I was thinking about this on the way down to Texas because I drove down to Texas last Saturday right after we did what ended up being just like, I was trying to think about how to do this. I mean, whatever of our listeners listened to the entire podcast for last week, there's got to be like some type of award or recognition that we should give those folks. It's like the Iron Ears Award or something for last week because that was,
I like that idea.
Yeah, dude, it was such an unruly monster. I mean, you know,
we had a little bit of fun last week for sure.
Yeah. Listen, we had a ton of fun last week. And then we decided to podcast. And that was really the story, right? Like,
and I want to say I have some good news. Not one, not two, not three, but all 8 of the buttons on the board are still working. So that is a good thing.
That's hooray right there. That's hooray.
That's because I tested them, you know. So
yay. Borderline cataclysmic accident last week. And it's funny because like I've replayed that moment in my mind so many times, and there's a part of me that feels bad for you, JB, because when you spilled the first White Claw, it was like there's that moment of realization where you're like, oh fuck, I've spilled a drink. But then in trying to catch the first drink that you spilled, like then you spilled another White Claw in the exact same place, and it was pure comedy of error. But yeah, you know, hooray.
You know, Mike, it's funny that you say that you replayed it in your mind because I was told by listener Linda Brundies, who I'm sure is going to be listening to this, that she literally replayed it a couple times on YouTube. That's probably maybe been a common thing. A lot of our YouTube watchers went ahead and just rewinded that a couple times and watched that debacle go down a few times.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So
fantastic. Well,
anybody
yeah, absolutely. And anybody that made it through, it ended up being nearly 3 hours worth of podcast. Iron Ears Award for all of you. And thank you for putting up with us. Clearly, by the time that we got to the end of that episode, it was I mean it was a little bit of mayhem, but I had an absolute blast. And I like, shout out to Justin, right? Justin Handel, who's been on the show multiple times. It was fantastic to have him out in person and to be able to do the show with Mr. Handel again.
Yep, thanks, Justin, and he will certainly be back.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of those guys that comes back again and again.
So with that being said, it is Friday, and I don't know if you noticed this, JB, but there was only 19. Well, maybe it was maybe it was 22 or 23 new hip hop albums came out today, from 23 more hip hop artists that I've never fucking heard of in my life.
What website
Yeah.
are you going on to find this? Because whenever I look, it just opens those. It's like, hey, I assume you know. So whatever I was on Metacritic is what I've been using. They said there are only 2 new records for this week.
Dude,
19 hip hop records.
I literally just open up Apple Music and I go to browse on Apple Music and I scroll down a little bit and it's new music. And so, of course, the first 2 releases that it shows are the Migos released an album this week, and then Maroon 5 released a new album this week as well. But then, and I'm not even making this up. I'm going to read this right now. So right next to the Migos is Polo G, released Hall of Fame. Spoiler alert, that's a hip hop record. Then Pure Born released The Life of Pure 5. Marshmello, which is not hip hop, but Marshmello released a new record. Larry June, Fouché, Crowder is actually Christian music. Oh, and honorable mention, 2 honorable mentions, I guess. Garbage did release a new record today, and AFI also released a new record today.
AFI
but then, yeah, AFI did as well, a new record called Bodies. And I didn't listen to AFI, which I wanted to, but I also realized that I had done no reading this week. And in an effort to not be a total shitbag between you and I actually spent a good amount of time trying to get through a good chunk of the Dark Tower series, just for you, buddy.
Well, thanks, buddy. Yeah. I appreciate that.
No, absolutely. So and it seems like fucking Apple does this to me every week. It seems like every week Apple has, I don't know, 18 fucking new hip hop records, and I just don't even know where these guys come from.
Yeah, like who are these people? Yeah, maybe it's just the same guy releasing like 18 albums a week or something
under different names,
different monikers. I did listen to Garbage for a while. I didn't do the whole thing, but I listened to some of it.
What did you think? Did you enjoy it?
Well, first of all, correct. So I'm not like immensely familiar with Garbage. Somewhat I am, but is a lot of their other stuff super industrial? Because this was pretty industrial. Okay, this was like very industrial, like borderline like 9 Inch Nails, like in its industrialness and the electronicness of it. There was a track called Wolves that really stuck out to me that I liked a lot. Really great like chorus on that one. So if you're gonna listen to one, go listen to Wolves.
Okay, nice. I love Shirley Manson. Like, I absolutely adore Shirley Manson, and I love her voice. And so even if you put that in front of industrial music, or if you put it in front of something that was more alternative and pop in nature, I would dig it all, because I could listen to her for a long time.
Yeah, she has a fantastic voice, and she's definitely a strong front person presence.
Yeah. Okay, so I have to ask, are you a big AFI fan? Because when I mentioned AFI had a new record out, you were kind of...
Okay, so that was more like surprise, because I didn't realize they were still making music. I was like an AFI fan a little bit when I was like going through my emo phase in high school, but I would not say that I'm an AFI. Not that I dislike them, but like I'm not a fervent AFI fan by any means.
You're not going to go crazy digging into AFI. That's fair.
No. Why? Are you?
No, I mean, listen, the songs that were big hits for AFI, I did enjoy. And if I remember correctly, even though we're not going to get a response tonight, I am going to quiz Lee Stamper about his love of AFI, because I do think that AFI was a band that fan of the show Lee Stamper has talked about in the past. So
yeah, I do remember that. Whenever like the album with Miss Murder, remember that song?
Hey, yes, absolutely.
Man, that was the one I listened to,
and that's a great song. Like, Miss Murder is a really, really fantastic song.
Yeah,
big fan. Cool. So
cool, like heavy metal bridge on it. I remember that in particular for some reason.
Yes, absolutely.
In like 10 years, and for some reason I remember that.
So otherwise, I mean, I don't know. Like I guess if you're a huge Migos fan, there's some new Migos for you. And otherwise, I think that this was a largely forgettable New Music Friday, in my opinion. I mean, I'm gonna check out Garbage, but I'm
I
gonna
think you
temper
should
my
at least
expectations now.
listen to that. Listen
Wolves, right?
to Wolves. Yep. And then there's another. Okay, Slater Kenny. Slater Kenny. I don't know how to pronounce
Yeah,
that.
Slater Keeney. Yep.
They put out a new record today.
I want to say I saw that too, but again, I didn't listen to it. And so I don't have any type of opinion on it. Did you listen to it at all, or just recognize that they released something?
Just recognized. Well, holy shit, dude! I don't know how I missed this, but apparently, King Gizzard put out a record today.
Get the fuck out of here! You're a liar.
No, it's
Bullshit.
called Butterfly 3000. King. This is a band that me and Mike have been kind of into lately, and our friend Lee Stamper as well. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. They put out a. I don't know if it's a song or no. I think it's a full album. It's called Butterfly 3000. The second release for 2021 already.
Holy fuck!
Because I didn't know that earlier today, dude. At all.
Yes, exactly. All right. Well, yeah. Okay. So full and fair disclosure, I will absolutely listen to this tomorrow because JB, just like you said, this is, King Giz is like, I'm mildly obsessed with them at this point in time. Like I've spent quite a bit of time with Fishing for Fishies recently, and then also a fair amount of time with Quarters as well, based on a recommendation from Lee Stamper. And then I was already turned on to Infest the Rat's Nest before, but Infest the Rat's Nest is just radically different from anything else they'd ever done, because it's really their homage to 80s thrash metal is really what Infest the Rat's Nest is. Yeah,
so whenever I introduce people to King Gizzard, I tell them to go listen to Fishing for Fishies and Infest the Rat's Nest back to back, because those albums fucking came out back to back, and
which is crazy shit.
Yeah, like if you would absolutely not think that they were the same band.
There's no way
you do that,
Yeah. There's just, especially if you listen to Infest the Rat's Nest first. If you listen to that as your first experience with King Giz, you wouldn't believe that any other album is actually them. And and that's where Quarters is really fascinating to me, because Quarters is a jazz record, is really what it is, but Fishing for Fishies is definitely, it's a spectacular record. And the back half of that record in particular, you get into some really, really intense kind of, modern psychedelic music that is really spectacular. So this is awesome. I'm really excited about this.
Definitely exciting. Yeah. I swear that wasn't listed earlier today when I looked. Because I feel
listen, for the record, Apple Music just clearly does not give a fuck, because it's nowhere on their new music, even buried really, really deep into like the new music for today. It's just not even fucking there. So Apple,
whoever's at Apple's just like, oh, Jesus Christ, another fucking King Gizzard record.
Like, fuck these guys. Oh man alive. Well, JB, what do you say? Do you want to jump in?
Let's do it, Mike. Let's jump back in. And for those unaware, again, we don't know why you would do this, but if you were just jumping into the middle of this podcast at episode 35 today, little milestone, main episode 35 was, if you count our bonus episodes, we're past that. But this is the 35th episode that we've done detailing Rolling Stone's list of the 500 greatest albums of all time. We're going through 5 records at a time, and today we're picking it back up at 350, which Mike is going to talk about.
All right. So coming in at number 350 from 1972, we're going to be talking about Stevie Wonder's album, Music of My Mind. Rolling Stone says, recording after his onerous contract with Motown had expired, a newly empowered Stevie Wonder flexed his artistic control on Music of My Mind, making a relaxed, love-smitten warm-up for blockbusters like Inner Visions and Songs in the Key of Love, Songs in the Key of Life, to come and playing nearly every funky note on classics such as Love Having You Around and Superwoman, Where Were You When I Needed You. Elsewhere, Wonder jammed on a clavinet during the Tight Boogie, Keep on Runnin', and on Evil, an open-hearted intimacy with political overtones. JB, I guess first question for you is, how much did you enjoy it? And was this one of the Stevie Wonder records that you were super familiar with going in?
Was not one that I was very familiar with, although there were a couple tunes. Like I definitely knew I Love Every Little Thing About You. Surprisingly, I don't think I knew the first track, which I kind of take it as one of the most popular songs off of this one. It could be wrong, but I think it's like one of the higher charting tunes. Love Having You Around, and I loved that song.
Yeah, I did too.
I thought that was great. I really like what Rolling Stone said, actually. Just looking back at their description, they said a relaxed, love-smitten warm-up, and it did kind of feel like that, like looking at the rest of his catalog. Not that this is lesser by any means, but he really kind of digs in with like Songs in the Key of Life and stuff, which I wonder how high that is on this list. Probably below 100, I would think, but I'm not 100% sure. What do you think about that? You think top 100 on Songs in the Key of Life?
I think, honestly, I think both Inner Visions and Songs in the Key of Life could be top 100 albums.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me.
So just in the sense that you're a sucker for horns, I am a straight up sucker for clavinet, and especially Stevie Wonder's clavinet. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of that on this record, but there's also a lot of synth, which is really cool because kind of a collaboration between him and an electronic duo, Tonto or something like that. And they actually had a proprietary synth that they had designed called the Tonto synth that he uses quite a bit throughout the record. So go ahead.
Speaking of which, JB, did you take a look at like the personnel credits on this record when you were digging in?
Yeah. You talking about
this fucking record blew me away with the fact that Stevie Wonder played everything.
He played drums, dude. That's what really blew me away. Like a lot of the stuff. Like if you play keyboards, you can play all the other key instruments, obviously, and you can play the synths and stuff. But the fact that he played the fucking drums on every track, and it was like every track except for track 5. And I was like, I want drums on track 5. There is no drums on track 5. No
drums. When I saw that he basically went fucking Trent Reznor on this disc, it made me appreciate it all the much more, because I think you get really you get creative, expressive, just beautiful songwriting and lyricism on here. But then whenever you realize that basically everything you're hearing is Stevie Wonder, it's really, really impressive. Really impressive. As if he wasn't impressive enough on his own.
He's so fucking impressive. Yeah. Such a talented dude. And obviously this gets talked about a lot, the fact that Stevie Wonder is blind. I'm just thinking about the drum situation. That's got to be interesting because, obviously they have to set those up very specifically. You know what I mean? Like you can't just be like, here's just a random kit, Stevie, come play the drums on it. Like he has to have that set. He probably has very specific, specifications in terms of like distance between the drums. I bet he has that all planned out. I almost guarantee that. Hold on, Mike. We lost your vocal. We are doing now. Oh, that's much better. Yep, there you go.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I think that I hit the mute button on my own mic. I'm so sorry.
No problem, Mike. saying?
I was just gonna say my favorite songs on this record. Love Having You Around. The opening track was phenomenal. I Love Every Little Thing About You. A couple tracks deeper in, but probably my favorite track on this whole thing is Happier Than the Morning Sun. It
I'm
just
so glad to hear you say that. That was one of 2 tracks that I gave 5 stars on this record. Yeah.
Yeah, so Happier Than the Morning Sun I gave the most stars to. I gave it 4 stars. I didn't put 5 stars next to anything, but at the same time, there were no songs that I didn't put any stars next to, right?
These
So
are all starred songs for sure. Yeah.
yeah, I mean everything was good, but to me, Happier Than the Morning Sun was just I don't know, like the instrumentation, the layers,
Just the
the
melody.
vocals. Yeah.
It has that melody that starts it off, and so this is a thing that Stevie Wonder does a lot that I really love, where he has like an instrument play a melody, and then later on he has the instrument play the melody again, but he sings along with it. But it's just like bum bum bum, and this one's like bum 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 bum, you know. And I love when he does that thing that he plays a melody on his instrument at the same time as doubling up with the vocals. It works so well. And
I
it
do
was
too.
like there were no drums. It just kind of felt like a nice little break in the middle of the album. Probably the best vocals from Stevie, in my opinion, was that song. Yeah. And it was funny because that was a clavinet heavy song. And on the song just before that, he was talking about how he was like, I love you more than my clavinet. He kept saying on the song Sweet Little Girl.
Yeah, and listen, I put a single star next to that, but at the same time, that song, it was a little cheesy for me because it reminded me of Me and My Old Piano. If you remember that song from Diana.
I do remember that. Yep.
That and I think it was the lyrical content of that song that made me feel that way. Like it just felt, I don't know.
Come on, honey, sugar.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a little gimmicky for sure. He was basically trying to convince his wife to bang him, is what it was.
Basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, maybe just jerk him off. Listen, it was something, right? It was something.
So what was I had 2 songs on here that I gave 5 stars to. Happier Than the Morning Sun was one, and there was one other. I'm curious, what was your second highest starred song? And it was not Love Having You Around for me.
Okay, so for me, again, 4 stars was the highest that I went, and that was Happier Than the Morning Sun. And then I put 3 stars next to Seems So Long, and then Love Having You Around, and I Love Every Little Thing About You. And probably I Love Every Little Thing About You was my favorite out of those 3 that I gave 3 stars next to. Why? Where'd you go with this?
So my second 5-star track was Keep On Running, which was the 8th track. It was just kind of like
chorus was fucking phenomenal, dude.
It was
like
fantastic.
That chorus was really good.
And it was just so funky. It was fast, high energy funk, wah. So like I said, I love clavinet, but I specifically love clavinet that is run through a wah pedal. And that's what was going on there.
So it's funny though, because I wrote, like, the notes that I made on that song is I feel like I should like this a lot more than I do, but it felt a little bit long in the tooth for me, is what it felt like. Because it felt like there was a really good thing, but that it was almost a good thing that just kept running in circles. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And honestly, like, I sort of felt like that a little bit early in the record. I was like, I wrote down, this is almost sacrilege, but this song could be a little bit shorter, and like maybe. And I felt bad even writing that, because who am I to fucking say that about a Stevie Wonder song? It's like,
you should really rethink Freebird, JB. I'm just throwing that out there.
We're not going to go there. And I was like, obviously Stevie Wonder knows what should happen here, and I don't. So who am I to... But you're saying that Leonard Skinner doesn't necessarily know that.
I'm saying that maybe they should think about guitar solos. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree that song could have been longer. Freebird could have been longer. But yeah, I mean, we both obviously love this one. Did you add
What
it
do
to
you, no, I didn't. And that's not because I didn't like it. I'm getting to the point that even my digital library is, I'm not trying to create too much mud, even though it's just a digital library, and that seems like that's something that I should just be able to freewheelingly add shit to. Um, I would pick it up on vinyl. I will say that, and I think that that's a bigger that's a bigger deal in my life at this point in time, so if I found it
Yes.
on vinyl, I would pick it up. But I didn't envision myself plugging into this record a whole lot while I just had my phone. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I hear you. I did add it to digital just because if this was to come up during like a shuffle, I would never be upset about it, which is mainly what I'm using my digital library for. Like I don't like go into my digital library just to pick something. Like if I like want to listen to something specific, I'll just stream it. Like my digital library I use just for shuffle. Like if I want to like put it on a Bluetooth speaker with some friends or something like that,
That's fascinating. And I love that that's how you're using your digital library, because I treat mine no different than my record collection. It becomes more a set and setting thing for me, if that
Yeah.
makes sense, because obviously if I'm listening to it on a record, I'm either going to be by myself or with my family in my home, or more likely than not, like I'm going to have guests over. And this is 100% an album that I would throw on with guests, and I would never feel bad about it. And if anybody complained about it, I would probably kindly ask them to get the fuck out of my house, right? Because it's that good. But if I'm listening to it in digital, maybe I'm driving around in my car, or if I'm not doing that, like I'm out on a walk or something like that. I rarely shuffle shit. You know what I mean? Like when I listen, I almost always listen to albums. Like sometimes I make a playlist, but I listen to records, you know what I mean? As a whole, largely.
And that's what I've been
Almost
doing
exclusively.
And that's what I mean. Like if I'm going to listen to something on my own, I'm just going to pull it up and listen to specifically that, So that's kind of what I do too. But like if I'm plugging my phone into a Bluetooth speaker with some friends, or like, around like, in whatever scenario, then I will just shuffle probably at that point.
And I agree with you 1,000% that if any one of these songs came up in a shuffle, I wouldn't be pissed. If Sweet Little Girl came up, I'd be like, come on, sugar. Come on, sugar.
That's right.
Other than that. What about Rex? What does Rexy Poo say?
Rex. I was about to say that. So Rex Todd, Music of My Mind, Stevie Wonder. Beautifully arranged, sang, and presented with just the right amount of necessary harmonica and horns. This album is pretty and funky at the same time. Keep on Running being my absolute favorite track on this record. Hey, that's the one that I was talking about. This is a prime example of the genius writing of Stevie Wonder. So, yeah, short, sweet little blurb from Rex there, but me and him agreed on, at least on the Keep on Running thing. Maybe not on the necessary harmonica, but we'll let that one slide. We'll dig into that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, I love the vinyl.
Oh, yes, yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, listen, I didn't necessarily add it to digital, but I'm when I come across the vinyl, which I'm sure at some point in time I will, it will be mine as well.
And I'm sure you're getting the same way, but my record collection is just getting dangerously large at this point. Like I had to go through and weed out and set aside, like I'm actually looking at this pile. I set aside probably 20 records that are going to have to go downstairs in a bin because I just simply don't have room for them.
That's ironic that you say that, because my father and I, we custom built a shelf for all my records That motherfucker is completely full. And so luckily my beautiful wife has sent me a link for like a modular storage system that I can add to like one chunk at a time. And I'm getting ready to order probably like 2 boxes, if you will, so that I can continue to have storage space for for my records. And I don't even feel bad about it. It's actually something that it's like crack, dude. Fucking buying records is like crack for me at this point, and I don't even give a shit. I'm not going to give it up. I'm going to continue to look for magic that I love listening to.
Yeah, until you go to rehab or something.
Yeah, and listen, rehab's going to be a long way away, because also shout out to my beautiful wife who bought me a brand new turntable for Father's Day. She gave it to me a little bit early because she's out in California. And so, dude, when I get back up there, actually during your bachelor week, like you got to come over. Like you got to come over to my place and check out my new fucking turntable.
I will
it's
do
crazy.
That. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
Sounds great.
Okay. So anyway, let's should we move on?
Yes, let's do it.
All right.
349 MC5 Kick Out the Jams 1969. It's the ultimate rock salute. Kick out the jams, motherfuckers. Recorded live in Detroit by Rob Tyner and his anarchist crew. Kick out the jams, writhes and screams with the belief that rock and roll is a necessary act of civil disobedience. The proof? It was banned by a Michigan department store. The MC5 proved their lefty credentials the summer before the album was recorded, when they were the only band that showed up to play for the Yippies protesting the 1968 Democratic Convention in Chicago. I had no idea that this even existed.
Right? Okay, so I'm glad that I'm not the only person. And yet, when I listened to Kick Out the Jams, I instantly recognized it because it's covered by Rage Against the Machine on their cover album Renegades. I want to say it's like the second or third track on Renegades. Zach De La Rocha and the crew cover Kick Out the Jams. And so it was funny.
It fits the Rage Against the Machine vibe perfectly.
It does. I mean, flawlessly. And so it's funny because when I was listening to it from the MC5, I could sing along with every line, like every verse, like all the choruses. I was singing right along. And it was cool because I actually loved the way that Rage covers this song unbelievably faithfully, like just really, really faithfully. And so, yeah, listen, I'm in. Like I'm in really, really hard. Loved it. The punk aspect to it, right? Like I think that a lot of people view this as, I don't know if you want to call it like a godfather of punk music. And I kind of get that, but at the same time, this almost felt, and this is going to sound stupid, it almost felt too refined to be punk. Does that make sense?
It doesn't sound stupid because it's not quite as like rough around the edges as a lot of the things that you would consider to be straight punk. But this is more like you mentioned it being thought of as a godfather of punk. That's what this kind of is. It's proto punk is what they officially refer to it as, which is the only other album that we've had on this list so far that was considered proto punk was the Stooges record that you loved so much. And I honestly, I think this is very different from that. Very, very different. So I think that it's safe to say that like proto punk is just a kind of collection of a bunch of different music that eventually led to punk. And there's probably a lot of bands that you could consider to have been influenced by this band that weren't necessarily punk bands. And speaking of that, like this is proto punk. It's a predecessor of punk. But also, I mean, I almost feel like this is a predecessor of like glam metal and like hair metal. Like seriously, actually, like there were a couple times, especially on the song "Come Together" is where I first thought this. I was like, it's like if you put the Ramones and Motley Crue together, then you get MC5. So I think this is as much proto hair metal as it is proto punk.
Well, and to me, you got some blues informed type of music, especially on the back half of this record. Like some kind of bluesy stomper type shit that came in that, again, I understand why they might say that. I understand why critics might say that this is proto punk or that this is a precursor to punk. But I'm with you, like there's almost like Rolling Stones type feel to some of this. It's sloppy as fuck, right? Like, I mean, it's
Yeah,
nowhere near as polished as what you get with like a typical blues rock act like the Stones, but it's definitely there.
and I think the proto punk aspect has a lot to do with like one, the lyrical content, the two, just like what they were actually standing for. I mean, they were kind of a protest band,
Very much so.
They were
I
kind
mean,
of
very much so.
fighting the machine. That was kind of their whole thing. Even the album title, I mean, kick out the jams, like surface meaning is like kick out, fucking kick out the jams, like music. But the if you like dig into that, like they're also kind of hinting at like, let's break down the barriers to
Yep.
grow, like that's kind of what that I took that as, at least.
Yeah. And I think that there was a lot of ways to read into it, but the playfulness of the music, because they're like, to me, on a lot of these tracks, like none of these tracks feel heavy in terms of lyrical content or like just the imagery of the lyrics, right? Like none of that is overly heavy. And I think that lends itself to a lot of later punk acts, right? Because to me, some of the best punk music doesn't take itself seriously. Like it is kind of,
Kind of
I don't
silly.
know. Yeah, it's silly and irreverent is some of my favorite punk music. And you get a little bit of that too here in MC5.
What'd you
But
think of the vocals on Ramblin' Rose? Like that false.
I loved it actually. And that's part of what I'm talking about, right? Like that's part of
Yeah,
that silliness that I was just referring to.
there was just what I wrote down here was like there's just an immense amount of energy, but the falsetto vocals were a little silly, borderline cheesy to me. I didn't dislike it. It honestly reminded me of John Fishman doing something like, which is for me and Mike's one of bands we like a lot, Fish, but
Yeah.
it was that kind of level of silliness.
And that's exactly right. I mean, I literally wrote that the vocals are funny,
Yeah,
in Ramblin' Rose. Like they were funny, but at the same time, the energy was fucking top notch. Like you felt like even though it was a joke, it felt kind of like an inside joke that the crowd was into and the band was into. And when you get that many people that are all together, even if it's a joke, it's great. And that kind of speaks to Fish again, you know?
yeah. There was a cool one that I liked a lot on the fourth track, which was called Rocket Reducer number 62 hyphen talk, whatever the hell that
Mhm.
means. But there was like this crazy breakdown in the middle where the two guitar players were the only sounds you were hearing, and they were just like flailingly soloing like at each other, and it was kind of interlocking. And that was really cool. So
Yep.
that's a track that's worth listening. But I gotta say, for me, as many good things we've said about this, and I don't have bad things to say about this record, but it didn't necessarily like resonate with me super deeply. Like I'm not like just musically, like I'm not going to listen to this a lot going forward. I think that's probably mainly on the list because of like the social aspect of it, and just like how important it was to such groups of people and stuff as it was, and playing at like the Democratic convention and all that. Obviously it had an impact in history, but I'm not going to listen to this stuff a whole lot personally. I don't know. How about you, Mike? Are you?
I would love to find this on vinyl. And
Yeah.
this is very similar to Stevie Wonder for me, I did not add it to digital, but if I found the vinyl this weekend, yeah, I'd buy it.
Yeah.
I'd buy it in an absolute heartbeat because this is a record that would be a lot of fun to spin in any setting. If I'm making dinner, if I'm just fucking hanging out, like, yeah, this is something that I would absolutely love to turn on at any given point in time. But the idea that I'm going to go out and go for a run and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to put on no, I'm not going to put on the MC5, you know? And so that's, again, that kind of distinction between what I'm putting on digital and what I'm looking for inside of my record collection. But to me, there were a ton of standouts. Like, I loved Kick Out the Jams. I put a couple of stars next to Rocket Reducer number 62. Motor City is Burning, I Want You Right Now, and Starship, which were basically like the back 3 tracks on the disc. Dude, I put 3 stars next to all those. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed this entire record, which is why, again, if I see it on vinyl, yeah, you bet your ass I'm going to pick it up, especially if I find it used.
Yeah, if I found it, it would absolutely depend on the price for me, because I'm not in love with this. There are some records that, like, on this list, even some that we've already encountered, that, like, basically if I saw, I would buy. I don't care if it was literally $500. You know, like, there are a couple that, like, they were just, especially if they were ones that were super rare. You know, and
Yeah.
I really loved, and it was at a really high price. I'd be like, yep. You know, I'm not going to spend it at any time soon. So, but this one, I mean, I would buy it for like $10, but I'm not going to spend much more than that. You know? But if I did see it around 10 or 15 or maybe even $20, you know, I would add it to the collection, but I'm not going to go out of my way for it. I'm not going to seek it out. But Starship, dude, that was something special. That was like a joke. That was a fun one. That was like there was a lot of imagery going on there. And
I know.
Was there any kind of like political subtext to that, or was that just like a fun, we're leaving the solar system kind of song? Because I didn't pick
up. Dude, I don't think that there were any political undertones on that. Like, I feel like that was a band that was born out of the height of psychedelia, and that was their take on legitimate psychedelic music, right? And that's like, I mean, is there still some punk in there? Yeah, there's still a little bit of punk, but dude, that's beautiful. Like, that's beautiful late 60s psychedelia to me. And I love it.
For some reason, it had me thinking about 2001: A Space Odyssey. I don't know why.
Of course it was.
Yeah, right. But I do what so once basically the story, it's like a story song about like a spaceship, I assume, leaving the solar system, and then at the end, the lead singer is just kind of like screaming this verse over and over again, and it's kind of spooky sounding. But I was gonna read the last couple of verses here because I thought they were really great.
Please do.
So it says, "It's cold in sunfire glory. From this point, I rise to infinity. There is a land whose beauty is almost unimaginable to the human mind. In a daze, we stand there and look further than the ordinary eye can see. Children far above the roof of this world, we can encompass vistas of the worlds. There is a land where the sun shines eternally, eternally, eternally. Out in outer space, a living, blazing fire so vital and alive that it burns our eyes to witness its splendor."
Dude, get the fuck out of here, right? Like, that's the weirdest, trippiest shit. And I love that. Like, fucking love it.
I do too. Yeah, that's why.
But then when you couple that with the music, because everybody that just listened to those lyrics, like, now imagine this wild ass like trippy music to go with it. And yeah, and you got to listen to MC5. You got to do Starship. So
check it out. Do Starship. That's going to be my recommend whenever we get to the playlist episode for this one, for sure. It's Starship. I don't know where you're at.
I actually love that. I mean, I'm like, it's going to be hard to pass up Kick Out the Jams, just because Kick Out the Jams is, I mean, it's super iconic, super short, and that speaks to the more punky aspects of the record. But at the same time, if we're just digging in for something that is a deep cut that people normally wouldn't hear and wouldn't recognize like immediately, I'm with you. And so that'll be a fun conversation to be had. That'll be a fun
Definitely.
conversation to have.
Yeah, it's not like indicative of the rest of the album at all. It's just an oddball.
No.
But
Yeah.
it's so much fun that like I have a hard time. Like if I was to just be like talking to one of my friends and I wanted to tell them one song to listen to, it would be that for sure.
For sure. All right. So Rex Todd says, yes, more music from the Far Out movement. And Kick Out the Jams is just what MC5 does. Ramblin' Rose is just a thrasher to get you hyped for the show. If this isn't some of the beginnings of punk, then Bob's your uncle. This album is going to get me all rowdy at work at 8:30 in the morning just after I have my can of Bang. Love this album. Deserves a spot on the list. Absolutely. It's a little low number-wise. Would be okay with it trading places with Big Brother and the holding company, but that sounds like a tenuous discussion point for the show. Hell, I love this album. Anyways, that's kind of interesting, right? So he kind of wants to knock it down a little bit, right? Not too far, because it wasn't that long ago that we were talking about Big Brother and the holding
like 20
company.
albums ago or something like that.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna belabor that point. You know, I don't hate where it's at right now. If you told me that it was gonna come in at 375 or 380, I would be okay with that too. I just appreciate and love the fact that it's here, and I love the fact that I got turned on to it because I had never heard this before, and I absolutely adore it.
I'm on board with Rex about switching it in Big Brother.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like criminally high by any means, but I think it could be dropped down a little ways.
Yeah, I feel you.
I definitely feel like Janis Joplin could be moved up in the rest of Big Brother as well, because there's certainly more Janis, but that album is really great.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on. The next sound that we're get to today is 348, released in 2001. We're going to be talking about Gillian Welch's album Time, The Revelator. Rolling Stone says Gillian Welch had a breakout moment when she appeared in the Coen brothers folk music themed movie Oh Brother Where Art Thou. She followed it with a striking modern roots album, collaborating with guitarist David Rollins on songs about love, sex, nostalgia, and the music of Elvis Presley. It ends with the 15-minute meditation I Dream a Highway, which the pair had never played before they recorded it. One example of the spontaneous power of an LP that made Depression-era music feel time-warped into the present. So JB, a couple of questions. A, were you familiar with this at all? And then B, obviously, what did you think?
I was not familiar with it at all. I'm pretty familiar with the Oh Brother Where Art Thou soundtrack. I'm a huge Coen Brothers fan. My favorite movie of all time is The Big Lebowski, no doubt about it. So,
word, dude.
So I knew whatever. So I knew whatever song she had on there. I'm sure I know fairly well, but was not familiar with this at all. So for some reason, like when I put this on, my immediate thought was like, I'm gonna like this album. I just had this immediate hunch that I did, and I did. I ended up liking it quite a bit. I do think like the very first song is like the strongest song on the entire record, maybe.
Thank you.
Like I fucking loved that song. An incredible hook on it, some beautiful harmonies. It's haunting, and the rest of the album is really, really good. Don't get me wrong, but that was the high point for me. But yeah, I mean, I liked it a lot. I'm a big fan. I really like that the whole album is just super authentic and organic because it's just her and I forget the guy's name, but
David Rollins.
David Rollins. Thank you very much. He's the guitar player, and it's just them. The entire thing. There's nothing else at all. There's no production.
His harmonies, because David Rollins does a lot of the harmonies with her on many of these songs. His harmonies are incredibly subtle and beautifully done. I'm not gonna
physical restraint.
Yes, intense restraint. Maybe sometimes I might even be able to make the argument too much restraint. Yeah. But yeah, I'm with you. I knew from the very first song that this would be an album that I would enjoy, but at the same time, by the time I got to the end of it, it was It was not dynamic. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
it was fairly linear. I mean, it just kind of felt like, yeah, I mean, it's like, it's all fairly similar. Not going to disagree with you on that. Yeah. I mean, because well, what can you really do with a banjo and a guitar and vocals and nothing else? You can't really get a wide variety of sounds, you know.
That's right.
So they're just, but I think that's pretty intentional. I mean, they're just kind of going, they're just doing what they do. But
That's right.
But that's a valid complaint.
And it's, listen, I don't even want to use the word complaint because in my mind, there is nothing to complain about with this record. If you want to get whatever you want to call it, like roots folk music, and maybe I think the best description that you can come up with is depression era music.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of that until Rolling Stone said that, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I really think that that's the most apropos description. If you want to hear an amazing example of depression era music, listen, fucking look no further. Like, this is it. This is your jam, and it's going to push all of the buttons that you want it to push. You know, and it's not even a criticism. My only statement would be, do I want an album of depression era music in my record collection? No. So I didn't add it to digital. Do I want to pick up the record? No, because I don't envision myself listening to this record very often, but I appreciate it, right? Like, there's beautiful songwriting. It's incredibly well executed, and I don't have any complaints. I put 1 star next to every single track on this record, with the exception of I Dream a Highway, which I put 2 stars next to, and Revelator, the very first track, which I put 3 stars next to. So this isn't bad music at all.
No. And I would, for me, I'm not going to add it to digital, but I would pick up the vinyl on this one. I absolutely would, because I would play this one. There's a lot that I liked about this, and especially if I'm just kind of doing some like housework around the house. Obviously, I'm doing housework around the house. If I'm doing some housework at someone else's house, you know, if I'm
you're gonna take this record with you. Hey,
yeah.
Do y'all have a record player? Because I know that I'm gonna be doing some housework, and I got
here
this
at your
record.
house. Yeah, but no, I would put this on for sure in the background, and I would be happy to listen to it. There's a lot I liked about it, but I totally get what you're saying about just the dynamicness of it, or the lack thereof, I guess we should say. And I'm surprised to hear you say that you put 2 stars next to I Dream a Highway. I thought it was good, but I thought it was way too long. I mean, I didn't really get it. Like sometimes there's times to really keep a song rolling, and like they said, have kind of a meditation on it. It was a solid melody. It was a decent little verse, but like it didn't really develop at all. It stayed exactly the same for the entire 14 and a half minutes that it was, that's a long time to listen to the same little folk verse over and over again. Like, I don't think even Bob Dylan has a lot of these songs. You know, Bob Dylan has songs that have like, 72 verses in them, and they're coming in at like 12 minutes. So
Desperation Row. Yeah.
Exactly. That was long.
Yeah, I don't know what it was about that song. I mean, it almost felt lullaby like in nature, and I didn't dislike the lullaby, I guess is the best way to say it. So even though it was the same lullaby and it went on for a really, really long time, it wasn't unpleasant enough for me to dislike it because of the length.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't unpleasant to listen to.
The crazy thing,
like grinding at my ears or anything, but
yeah. The crazy thing though is, like, going back to the vinyl or no vinyl for me, even if I'm going over to somebody else's house to do some housework, If I had Mothership Connection and this, especially if I'm going to do some fucking housework, dude, I'm going to plug into the Mothership. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to plug into One Nation Under Groove. I'm going to fucking, dude, I'm going to plug into Liquid Swords, or I'm going to plug into fucking Kick Out the Jams, you
Yeah.
know? And that's where I circle back around to, you know, I'm not hating. Like, this is for the genre of music that it represents, it's incredibly well executed. It's just not something that I necessarily feel compelled to revisit in any capacity or setting necessarily.
Gotcha. And that's totally fair. What songs were highlights for you? You said I Dream a Highway.
I Dream a Highway, but yeah, Revelator to me is definitely, that's the most obvious standout on this record for me.
So that song reminded me of Jim James, like kind of like a female version of Jim James. And then the rest of the record did not at all, just to be clear. But just that one totally did. Another highlight for me was Everything Is Free. That there's some really, really great harmonies on that one. That kind of reminded me of Jason Isbell a little bit, and just the writing, just the structure of the songwriting.
Yeah.
I liked the idea behind the lyrics of April the 14th, part 1, and subsequently Ruination Day, part 2. Did you kind of pick up on what was going on there at all?
Yes. Yeah.
So they were just kind of listing events that had happened on April the 14th. So there's 3 big events that they reference. One of which is the Titanic sinking, and then another one is Lincoln's assassination, and then the Black Sunday Dust Bowl storm, which is where a bunch of people had to basically evacuate because it was like the worst Dust Bowl storm in a long time. And that all happened. All those events occurred on April 14th. And so it's just kind of interesting to me, the lyrics behind that song. I like that one a lot. So
again, it's so the strengths of this album to me are also its weaknesses, meaning every song is just so simple and straightforward and incredibly well done, but it was also the simplicity that was I mean, that's the weakness of it too, you know, like the lack of dynamism across the album and across each individual song.
There you go. That's the word I was looking for before.
Yeah, they created issues for me, you know.
We got to do a little shout out for that live track, though. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, from the Ryman.
Yeah, I mean, when I listened to that, the first time I listened to it, I didn't really believe it was live. I mean, I know there was some clapping at the end, but I figured maybe that was added in the studio or something. I know it sounded different, but I mean, that's a live track, a fully live track. They sound really, really fucking good live.
Like, very good.
Basically, the harmonies were perfect on that. Like it sounded like a studio recording, you know?
And that's, I Want to Sing That Rock and Roll is the track that that JB's referring to. And it really is. I mean, it's spectacular, like spectacular quality. I mean, it really, you could absolutely mistake that for being a studio recording until you get deeper into the song, and particularly at the very end. But that was recorded live at the Ryman Auditorium. And by the time that you get to the end, yeah, the audience is going nuts, and rightfully so. Because I mean, they smash it. They absolutely smash it. So
they definitely did. Yep. Let's read Rex.
Yeah.
So Rex Todd on Time, the Revelator. Never listened to Jillian Welch before, so here's another first. Kind of like this album. It's simple and folky at times. Great lyrics and simple melodies. This one is up to you guys for placement. We're starting to get lower on the list. We may be getting closer to some hallowed ground. So yeah, let's talk placement, Mike. Thoughts?
I understand why they put it here on on my personal list, I'm probably going to drop it 50 to 75 places because the competency and the representation that it provides for this particular type of music it's clear and present, right? And I'm not going to argue with what it's doing to represent kind of that roots folk depression era music. But at the same time, for me, I think about where does that fit in the pantheon of jazz? Where does that fit within the pantheon of rock and roll? Where does this fit within the pantheon of country music? And to me, it's the impact that is lacking, and that lack of impact for me makes me want to see it closer to 430, right? 430. That's what I'm going to say.
So, well, first of all, let me preface this by saying that I really like this record a lot, and like I said, I would absolutely buy the vinyl on this. In fact, if I see it, I'll buy it. I mean, especially if it's like a new copy and I can get it for $20-$30, I will definitely buy it. I think this is way too high. I think this is at least 100 spots too high for me.
And I don't hate you for that.
And like you said, you said the level of competency that's there, but I think there's a lot of artists that have this level of competency. I think it's a pretty widespread thing, even in this genre. And so you mentioned like that we've been talking about Depression era, but like what this kind of is like officially classified as is alt country, right? I think there's a lot of alt country that for me I would put ahead of, namely like Jason Isbell, some of the early My Morning Jacket stuff I would put above this, no doubt.
I mean, if you swapped this and Southeastern, I would be totally okay with that. And I think that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah. To me, I don't have the problem.
Because that was 460.
It was low. I don't have a problem with this being on the list, but this is a close to the very bottom of the list thing for me, which is, again, that's a huge honor to be on this list at all, to be on the 500 greatest albums of all time. I think that, like a 485 slot is perfect for this,
Yeah. And I said my piece. I don't think it has to be necessarily that low because I really do think that the execution here is unbelievable. But at the same time, if you told me that you could swap Jason Isbell's Southeastern with this album, fuck yes, and twice on Sunday. Like, I'm going to take that every day of the week.
Yeah, agreed.
Or if you told me that you could drop this album entirely and add meta modern sounds in country music from Sturgill Simpson, I would do that too.
Or any My Morning Jacket.
Certainly It Still Moves, Z, Circuital. Yeah. Fuck off. I'd take them all.
We should. We haven't not done a snub episode in a while.
In a hot minute. No.
That's something that I'd like I feel like you probably feel the same way. We need to get back into that. So
yeah,
maybe we'll pick that episode today.
Yeah, we got a couple of weeks coming up where we're going to be together, where we can absolutely do a regular show and then follow that up with a snub, because we also owe people more playlists, right?
Yeah.
So
bonus. We might even go kind of every other for a little while, or let us know. It's like, send us an email. Here's a good chance to plug the email. Hit us up at thislistsucks@gmail.com. Send us a voice message at anchor.fm/thislistsucks. Let us know. Do you want more bonus episodes that center around snubs, or do you want more playlists? And we're gonna do both. But what do you want to hear first? Let us know.
There you go. Yep. Okay. What do you say? Do you want to move on?
Let's move on. 347. This is me, right?
Yes.
Okay. I already forgot. All right. So coming in at 347 is Jizza, Liquid Swords from 95. The wooest of all of the Wu-Tang masterpieces, full of grimily cinematic production, winding crime narratives, mysticism and mystery, not to mention copious kung fu movie references and contributions from every Wu member. Jizza delivers rhymes that are economical but devastating in their wisdom and narrative detail. Bloodbaths and elevator shafts like these murderous rhymes tight from genuine craft, he raps, summing up his style. Whatever strange alchemy the Staten Island guys came up with, Liquid Swords has it in utterly potent form. I love that last sentence. That sums it up 100%. Whatever strange alchemy, definitely, because that's really what it is. It's alchemy,
Dude,
or
this
it's cooking, or
record,
something, you know.
this record is, I don't know. There's a handful of Wu-Tang and Wu-Tang solo records that achieve this state of hip hop magic for me. And Enter the 36 Chambers is one of them. Liquid Swords is another one, and then Raekwon, only built for Cuban links, and we haven't seen 36 Chambers yet, and we haven't seen Only Built for Cuban links, and I suspect that those albums. 36 Chambers is probably going to be top 100, I would guess. Only Built for Cuban links. If you told me that was top 200, I wouldn't be surprised by that.
I was not to hear you mention Ghostface's record that was on here.
And Supreme Clientele is, listen, I really enjoyed Supreme Clientele. I'll be curious to see if we get Iron Man, which was Ghostface's first solo record. I don't think we do. I really think that Wu-Tang from this point forward is going to be Chef Raekwon, Only Built for Cuban links, and 36 Chambers. That's my own bold prediction.
So you really think the rest of this list be on here above Jizza?
Yeah. Cuban links is fucking ridiculous, dude. Like, it's really, really good. And it's hard for me because I love them both. On a personal level, I probably prefer Liquid Swords. But I think a lot of critical hype is given to Cuban links. Like, I really do. And I certainly, there's no fucking way that we don't see it. And considering that we came to this record first, that just means that Raekwon got more love than Jizza did.
Gotcha.
But on this record, so this is one of the few solo Wu-Tang records that RZA kept to himself, right? And that's something that stands out when you talk about the production here, because RZA produced all of the Wu-Tang albums himself. And when all of the members of Wu-Tang started doing their own individual albums, like, this was one that RZA said, no, I want to produce this one, you know. And a lot of the other stuff was farmed out to other producers, or other producers were brought in, but this is one of the ones that RZA kind of kept tight to the vest. And it's magic, dude. Like, I love the Jizza. I love the way he flows. If you listen to this whole thing track for track, you basically get tracks from almost every other member of Wu-Tang appears on this album at different points in time. Standouts are Raekwon on Investigative Reports. Raekwon's verses on that are just really, really good. But Shadowboxing has a Method Man feature, which is absolute fire. But my favorite track on this entire album, and for the record, listen, I put at least 1 star next to everything. There were 3 songs that I put at least 4 stars next to, and there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 songs that I put at least 3 stars next to. This was already part of my digital catalog because I listened to this record a ton, and I own the vinyl. So I'm a huge fucking fan of Liquid Swords, a huge fan. But the one that I want to talk to you about, and the one that I want to see if you made note of, is I want to know what you thought of Labels. The 6th track on the record.
So Labels, I gave a star, but I only gave 1 star.
Did you notice what Jizza did on that?
I didn't write anything down specific.
Okay, so if you go back and if you look at his flow on that, almost every verse in that song makes reference to a record label, whether it be like Arista or whether it be like Geffen
Right.
or
I mean, that
whether
was
it be Island Records.
the point, right?
Almost
It's kind of anti-label.
it was, yes, the song was anti-label, but if you actually look at his flows, he worked in fucking 30 different record labels into his rhymes. And that's something that when you look at subsequent Jizza albums, he does that on almost every album. So if you look at Legend of Liquid Swords, which was the one that he did after this, he's got a song called Fame where he works different celebrities into every single one of his like lines on his verses. He's got another song called Animal Planet where every different line talks about different animals of the animal kingdom that he works together into a story. And that's why he's the genius, right?
So no,
Like
I didn't really pick up on that. Yeah.
it's like go back. If you go back and if you read what he's rapping and think about it with the understanding that he's working all these different record labels into the rap, it's so brilliant, dude. It's so brilliant. I love it. Love it absolutely. And hands down, that's my favorite song on this record is Labels. But that goes hand in hand with, to me, like when he starts doing that, it's yeah, and it's so fucking clever when he does that. To me, it's unbelievably clever. I love it.
No, definitely. Just to kind of back up what you were saying, like most of these songs I have stars next to. Actually, all of them. I think all of them I have some level of stars next to. Several of them I have 4 or more. There are a couple tunes that I have 5 stars next to. There are 2 stars that I have 5 stars next to.
What did you put 5 stars next to? I want to know.
I think my 2 favorite tracks on this were Swordsman and I Got You Back.
I Got You Back. That sample is fucking crazy.
Like, motherfucker steps out of his place and gets slapped in the motherfucking face. Yeah. I just love that one. First of all, I just love Jizza's voice.
Yes.
Like, I think that just the tonality of his voice for me, it makes me really feel what he's saying. Like when he fucking emphasizes like a word, whatever it is, like his voice, I just love it. It just resonates with me the most from almost honestly, like Tupac and him are probably like the most like this record I wasn't really familiar with, but after listening, I probably listened to this record 4 times through at least, maybe 5 times this week. And like I was texting my buddy Justin and I was like, I think this is like my new favorite hip hop record of all time. And
it's so exciting.
Like they don't call him the genius for no reason. Is kind of what
I know. And it's funny because to me, he's the anti-mumble rapper. You know what I mean? Like
the opposite of that. Yeah.
Yeah. He enunciates everything and his flow is so intelligent. Like it's really fucking good, man. Really
and
good.
His lyrics and like just everything about this record. I love the fact that there's not like a lot of cheesy skits or anything. There is kind of one little skit, but it's cool. It's at the beginning
in front of Killer Hills.
Yes. The Hell's Win stuff.
Mr. Greco.
Yeah. It's like, a Don Rodriguez.
Don Rodriguez. I think you know him because he's down in the 132nd precinct singing like a fucking bird.
Yeah. Love that shit, dude. That's awesome. And like,
then that drops into Killer Hills 10304, which the fucking song Killer Hills 10304 is, god damn it, dude. It's so tight. Like so tight and so good.
And lyrically, that's like basically them talking about being drug dealers, you know?
Yes. Exactly.
And they get fucking intense in there that like I wrote, I want their small intestines ripped from their interior and shit like that. He's fucking hardcore. He's not kidding around.
So another thing to point out about this record is it's funny because the beats on this record that the RZA creates are, for the most part, unbelievably simple. And that's not to take anything away from what he did. They're wonderful, but they're so simple because the flow and the lyricism that you get on top of those beats, like I think that RZA created a background that allowed everything that Jizz and all the rest of the features that were on here, like all the rest of the Wu-Tang that appears on here, it allowed everything that they were doing to shine. And they're there. If you pay attention to the beats, they're wonderful. They're great, but they're almost so simple to give room for the lyricism to come out. Does that make sense?
And that's exactly what it was. Like, in my opinion, he was thinking collaboratively. He wasn't thinking, like, you can tell some producers are like, maybe a little fucking up on their high horses and like, I gotta fucking prove something with this and impress people. He was not thinking about that. He was thinking about the final product. And that really shows because the final product is such a cohesive piece of art. It just fits so well together. Like you said, if you really sit down and listen to them, like, you're going to be impressed by them, but they don't take the forefront of your attention by any means.
That's right. They're great unto themselves, but they're also unbelievably simple. I do want to give a shout out to Killa Priest, who basically wrote and produced the entire last track on the album, Basic Instructions Before Leaving Earth, which is an acronym it's an acronym for the word Bible, right? But that track is fucking spectacular. It's one of my favorite ones. Jizza doesn't really have anything to do with it. It was all written and performed by Killa Priest from Wu-Tang Clan, but fucking A, dude. Bible is a really, really fantastic song. I love it.
Yeah, what a clever acronym to think up. And also, we haven't even mentioned this yet, but all the fucking Kung Fu movie samples, like, those were super
God damn, dude.
Yeah. And
dude, my favorite one is right at the end too, right? That one right at the end where he's like, where the guy basically has been killed and he's like, oh, I've always wanted to hear the sound of whispering winds that's made when the throat is cut perfectly.
But to have my own throat cut is just ridiculous.
Yeah, to have it happen to me is ridiculous.
And that's at the end of I Got Your Back. And this is all of the samples are from one movie. Do you remember off the top of your head the movie? Otherwise, I'm going to pull it up right now.
It's Shogun.
Shogun Assassin?
Yeah, Shogun Assassin. That's what it's from.
I think I'm pulling it up. I want to just verify that we didn't just wildly misquote that.
No, I don't think that you did. And I'm also nearly certain that Shogun Assassin is the movie that in Kill Bill Volume 2, the movie, of course, by Quentin Tarantino, when Uma Thurman's character shows up, finally sees Bill and realizes that her daughter, whom she thought was dead this whole time, is actually alive. Her daughter's name is B. Her and her daughter sit down that night when she first meets her to watch a movie. And what movie are they watching, JB? They're watching
Shogun
Assassin. Yes.
Yep. So that's what it is. It's Shogun Assassin, which is a 1980 film directed by Robert Houston. I kind of want to watch this movie. We should sit down and watch this movie, Mike.
We should, dude. I'm totally down because I've never seen Shogun Assassin, but I would absolutely sit down and watch Shogun Assassin. So we should.
Let's do it. Let's watch Shogun Assassin next week.
In honor of the Jizza. In honor of the Jizza. So listen, I do. I want to get to Rex, but before we even get to Rex, I'm so thrilled that you love this album. I love it too. Obviously, I was super familiar with it going into it. I already own the vinyl. I've had it as part of my digital catalog for a long time. I want to know, I'm assuming that you added it to digital. What do you think about digital versus vinyl? And then what do you think about the placement of it? Like, I'm super curious about that.
I did add digital. Sorry. And I would love the vinyl of it. Yep.
Cheers.
Cheers.
To Jizza.
I would love the vinyl placement, and I'm sure I will find the vinyl. I'm sure that you already have it, right?
I do.
Yep. It's on my acquire list, definitely, and it will be acquired soon enough. But as far as placement, I think it's decent. It could move up a little bit. I mean, I'm not going to be upset about that at all. But I have a hard time. Again, I'm just kind of butthurt about All Eyes on Me's placement.
Tupac.
Which is one of my favorite like hip hop albums in general. Tupac's probably my favorite rapper. Maybe rivaled by Jizza at this point. Probably not though. I mean, they're close. Like Jizza's going to be one of my favorites for sure. And as I listen to more and more to him and to this album and other things that he's done, he's probably going to become one of my favorite rappers. I have a feeling. But
I really I really do want you to now check out Legend of Liquid Swords, which was the follow-up to this. Like that was Jizza's pretty sure it was the next album that he did after this. You should really listen to that because if you enjoyed this album, I think you'll enjoy that a lot. I'm right there with you though. I fucking love Tupac. Like I love Tupac like nobody's business. I was super disappointed to see All Eyes on Me as low as it was on the list, especially because when I went back and re-listened to it, and we talked about it, like anybody can go back and listen to that episode. That album is a double album, and B, fucking rips, dude. Every track just about on All Eyes on Me is a bang, like an absolute banger. And that's not to say that Liquid Swords isn't, because it is. Every fucking track on here is a banger. And realistically, I guess where I'm going with this is I'm okay with this album being here. If you moved it up to 300, I think that would make more sense. I'm going to have more to say when we encounter Only Built for Cuban Links by Chef Raekwon. I'm probably going to have something to say when we encounter 36 Chambers, but to me, 36 Chambers is in a league of its own. That should be a top 100 album. I feel confident in saying that it is a top 100 album. It might even be a top 50 album, and I'll be okay with either one of those placements for Enter the 36 Chambers, because that was, in terms of influence and execution, it's fucking phenomenal. Like you can't approach it. It's really, really that good. But All Eyes on Me, like I'm still disappointed. I'm still disappointed and butthurt about how low it was, because to me, Tupac was every bit as influential in his own way on rap, on music, on entertainment, right? Like on movies and shit. Like that guy was super fucking talented, and he got,
and on just society and like the political side of things,
that's
especially.
right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. And he got fucking snubbed. So fuck you, Rolling Stone. Like you fucked up. You fucked up with Tupac. And in my mind, I'm okay if you want to put Jizza above Tupac, but they should be in the same. They should at least live in the same neighborhood to me.
I could hear an argument for Jizza above Tupac. What I could not hear an argument for is Lil Wayne and Drake both above Tupac.
Yeah, fuck off. Fuck you. Yes. Fuck you. Like that's
no
terrible.
Fucking way. Yeah,
no way.
That's embarrassing.
All right. Can I read Rex real quick?
Yes.
All right. So Rex says, that intro alone has me hooked on the Jizza again. I love his instrumentals. His flow alone is incredible. He doesn't have to be overly dramatic to get the message of his lyrics. I appreciate that about him. Hell, this is the man that directed us through the 36 Chambers. If you're a fan of Wu-Tang, there's no reason to hate this album. Great stuff. Amen, Rex. It's fucking wonderful.
Yep. Cool. Well, before we get into circle jerk territory, let's move on.
All right, the last album we're going to talk about this week, number 346. Really, really recent album from 2013. It's the Arctic Monkeys, their album AM. Rolling Stone says, not many Britpop bands come up with strong second acts like this. The Arctic Monkeys debuted with the stun gun pop punk of 2005's Whatever People Say I Am, That's What I'm Not. But by 2013, they had moved to LA and on AM hit a sound that frontman Alex Turner likened to, quote, the Spiders from Mars covering Aaliyah, end quote. The results were not unlike David Bowie's transformation on Station to Station, alluringly spooky, full of distressed falsetto soul, noir guitars, and rife with bar scenes that look like crime scenes with dead-end hookups. This is fascinating to me. Like the fact that this album got this much love on a list like this is really, really fascinating to me. And it's funny because we'll get into this with Rex's comments, but even Rolling Stone made mention of whatever people say about me. That's what I am not, which was Arctic Monkeys' first album. I don't know. Do you think that this is the only Arctic Monkeys that we encounter on this list, JB? And how familiar are you with the Arctic Monkeys to begin with, I guess?
Okay, well, first of all, I want to say I'm kind of confused by their comment about second act because this is not their second album.
No. I think that what they meant by that was that if you listen to Whatever People Say I Am, That's What I'm Not, that was a fucking punk record, right? And this is anything but a punk record. To me, that's what that comment is speaking to.
Okay, second act, like second act of a play. I get it. Okay,
you got it.
So I was introduced to this band basically in 2006. I had this friend of mine. His name is William McDowell. I say that in case he's listening. He's a really great dude. In fact, he'd be a really fun guy to have on this podcast eventually. He's really, really busy these days. He's a doctor in Chicago, I believe. But I went to high school with him, and he turned me on to this band back in 2006. Like the year, whatever people say I am, that's what I'm not. He was like, I found this. First of all, he was on Reddit way before anybody else, or way before any, and he was like, dude, you got to get on this Reddit thing. It's going to be the next big thing. And I was like, dude, shut up. No, it's and so I never did it. And he was like, I found my new favorite band. I love this guy's, the Arctic Monkeys. And so he gave me she burned me their CD. So I had a burned copy of Whatever People Say I Am, That's What I'm Not. And I dug it. I love that song. I bet
that you look good on the dance floor.
Yeah, something like that. Yep. I love that one.
Tune, dude.
But honestly, since then, I didn't listen to anything from this band. And just looking through their discography, like I don't know any of this. They have an album from 2011 called "Suck It and See." That's hilarious. But I didn't listen to any of that. So this is probably the second Arctic Monkeys album that I've listened to. Not that I didn't like Whatever People Say That's What I'm Not, but they just kind of fell by the wayside for me and weren't one of the highlights. But I like that one a lot. But I was, in terms of this record, I was familiar with Do I Want to Know because everybody was, because it was a huge fucking song.
A massive radio hit.
Massive. And I like that song a lot. And I like Are You Mine a lot. But a lot of the rest of this record is just kind of, and there's a couple songs I like. I like Arabella a lot. But let me finish what I was going to say. A lot of the rest of this record is just kind of that exact same thing, just like repackaged a little bit. It's all kind of this dark, alternative rock kind of vibe. The vocals are very similar throughout, with Alex Turner's vocals and whoever's doing the falsetto vocal kind of doubling up with it. And it's a good sound. It's a very good sound, but it's consistent throughout. It all kind of sounds the same to me. It's kind of what I'm getting at.
That's fascinating. Do you Do you think that it's representative of anything that should be on this list at this point on the list?
I think it's high. I think it's really high. I don't think it's outlandish to put these guys on the list. I think it's maybe a bit of a stretch for me personally, but I don't think it's outlandish. I think that you can make an argument for it. But I think it's very high. I think that I would pretty much argue against it being this high almost under any circumstances.
Having familiarity with their first record, would you rather see their first record versus this one?
No, because this is much more refined, and they really kind of hit their stride, and they achieved such bigger success. This album clearly resonated with way more people. Do I like whatever people say I am? That's what I'm not more, probably, but like in terms of putting it on this list, I think that'd be just even harder to justify if you were like, hey, justify that album belongs on this list. I'd have a hard time doing that personally.
Yeah.
Wouldn't feel strongly about putting it on here. So I think if you're going to put one Arctic Monkeys record on there, it probably has to be this one, whether that's my favorite one or not. But I think it's way too high.
Well, let me just say this. Lee Stanbury is going to package up as much hate as he possibly can in a box, and he's going to fucking express mail it to you for even having said that. But I don't disagree with you. Like, to me, I think that this is a more mature version and a more, you use the word refined. I love that, right? This is like the best in my mind. This is the best version of the Arctic Monkeys, and I love their debut. It's super punky, and the irreverence from that album is wonderful. I think that it captured them at a specific snapshot in time, but I think that this one's better, and to me, there's a ton that stand out here. I love Do I Want to Know? I love Are You Mine? Just Like You. Arabella is my favorite track on the record. There's just something about the hook in that song that fucking gets me, right? Like, I just like, it's almost headbanger-ish in the response that I get out of it. That's right. But at the same time, right up there with Arabella in terms of my favorite songs on this record is Knee Socks, which is almost at the tail end. Like, it's the second to last song on the record, and it's just so fucking cool. Like, I love the lyrics of the song. I love the sound of that song. And even the cooler tracks on here, right? Like Number One Party Anthem and Mad Sounds, which are back to back after you get past like the big sounds of Are You Mine, One for the Road, and Arabella. Like, you get into these kind of cool down tracks, which I love because it creates a much more dynamic record to me and a much more interesting record.
Mad Sounds is really interesting because it's like a soul song. It's like not like a lot of the rest. It's not dark like a lot of the rest of it. It's a nice little break. That's a great song. I like that one a lot. There's a couple things that you said that I want to kind of address. Knee Socks, like you said, I really liked the lyrics on that one a lot. Like the way that he kind of tied in the title. Yeah. It was really great. But not to talk shit about it, but that was one of the points in the record that I was like, to be honest, it's kind of sounding repackaged to me at this point. Like a lot of it sounded like the other songs just kind of repackaged. Although there was a really good bridge on that.
And that's almost a repackaging of what you get in Number One Party Anthem and Mad Sounds to a certain extent, right? Like, it's like that softer feel type of repackaging.
Do I Want to Know? It's such an iconic riff. It's one of those like instant iconic riffs. And like you said, big sound, and it definitely is that, but it's like kind of because of that riff. Like, you listen back to that, like there's really not a whole lot going on in that track. Like, it's guitar, it's bass, and other than that, there's like a lot of space, like a lot more than I think of. Like for some reason, when I imagine that, like I knew that song, I went to listen to it and I was like, oh, Do I Want to Know? It's this huge song fucking, you know, like fit for commercials almost.
Yeah.
And it's just this grand production. When I listen to it, like it's kind of minimalist. Like there's a lot of space in that.
JB, there's a fuck ton of space in this whole record.
Yeah.
Almost every song on this record has a fuck ton of space. Sometimes that space occurs in the chorus, sometimes that space occurs in the verse, but it's there. Like that's a persistent theme in this record. And I don't hate it because that's what creates that dynamism to me.
No, to be very clear, like I'm saying that as a good thing. I'm saying I'm not saying it's a bad thing at all. I'm saying I liked that. But like whatever image I had in my mind of how that song sounded, like when I really listened to it with intent and with some scrutiny, it was not that. It was a lot less produced than what I expected. And to that same point, some of this stuff sounds almost like it's like borderline electronic music, but it's not at all. Like it's like
not at all
band. There's almost no like electronic elements, but it sounds like it fits right in with like club music, but it's a band. Like do I want to know? Like honestly, it feels like it fits in, like you could fit in at a club.
Yeah.
But it's not, there's nothing electronic. There's no synthesizers. It's just a band. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah. But I also think that everything that you're saying is probably why it's appearing at this point on the list. Because all of what you're describing is making it really unique relative to everything else that we've encountered up to this point in time from a band like this, you know, and I'm not going to vehemently disagree with your opinion in terms of, you know, does it deserve to be this high or should it be at, you know, 4.25 or 450? I'm not going to vehemently disagree with that. Quite frankly, there's a part of me that's kind of thrilled with the fact that they listed it where they did, because I think that shows a certain appreciation for the uniqueness, you know, that you just eloquently described, that you eloquently ascribed to this album, because you really did. And I think that you nailed everything that makes this album special. Do those unique qualities warrant this high of a placement? You know, that's entirely debatable.
It's obvious, definitely debatable. And I'll be interested to see what Lee's actual response is, because while I know he loves this band and he loves a lot of the earlier records, right? Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah.
I would be really surprised if Lee was like all up in arms and like, hey, you know what? Several of these albums belong on this list. Like, I think that'd be a crazy thing to say, you know?
I agree.
And I don't think, like, even there's plenty of music that I love and that for me personally, I'm like obsessed with, you know, but I wouldn't necessarily put it on the list, and I wouldn't say it belongs here and these are the reasons why. And so I don't know. I'll be surprised if Lee actually comes at me and is like wanting to put a lot of the earlier Arctic Monkeys albums on the list. Maybe he will. Maybe he's that much of a fan, and not to talk down on being that big of a fan of Arctic Monkeys at all. If you are, you are. And but like, I don't know. I would be surprised if he was really that up in arms about wanting that many of these guys to be on the list. We'll see.
I mean, like he and I have talked about this to a pretty fair extent, and I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but I do know that there's some like really strong emotional responses for him with this record. And I think that he probably would prefer to see some earlier stuff on here. Listen, I like the earlier stuff, but I also really, really enjoy and appreciate this album. I'm happy to see it on the list. I'm not upset with it being where it's at. I wouldn't be upset with it if it was at 425. because I think just the recognition, as we were talking about earlier, right? If you make it in the top 500 albums of all time, you have fucking done something right. And I certainly feel like the Arctic Monkeys have done something right. I've had this in my digital library for a really long time. I've actually picked it up on vinyl and just haven't pulled the trigger on it. And I'm still going to struggle with that, dude. Like, I see it in a record shop. I see it in Marv's, dude. I see it in Marv's in Des Moines all the time. And every time I pick it up and I'm like, yeah, I should get this. And then I think to myself, you know what? I'm going to keep looking.
And then you find something else.
Yeah, and then I find something else that I want more. Again, not to take anything away from it. I listen to this record quite a bit. I haven't pulled the trigger on vinyl. That doesn't mean that I never will.
Yep. And I'm kind of right there with you. I would certainly consider adding this to the collection. I didn't actually add it to digital. Not that I wouldn't, but I don't know that I'm going to pull it up that much. But again, just to go back to my point about the shuffle thing earlier, I certainly wouldn't be disappointed if this were to come up on shuffle. So, I might end up adding it to digital.
And that's funny because these are songs that, on the rare occasions that I do just like hit shuffle, like when these songs come up, I fucking love it when they come up on shuffle. So it's funny that, yeah. That's a role reversal for us right there.
Exactly. Yep.
You want to read Rex?
Yep. So here's Rex. Does this mean that their debut album is going to be higher on this bullshit list? I fucking hope not. Trade that album out for this one at this spot. But that's just my opinion. I think their debut is a better album. I'm going to have to revisit that album. Yeah, I was right. Arctic Monkey or AM is a good album. However, not as good as whatever people say about me. That's what I'm not. This one is a bit too polished. Yep. So kind of going back to the refined thing that we were talking about. Yeah. And a lot of the tracks sound similar to another artist or songs that I know I've heard before. I just can't put my finger on it. Maybe it's just that it all sounds the same, Rex. It could be that.
Well, and I think that's where Lee Stamper is going to fall on this too, and that's, I don't think that it's an unpopular opinion, choosing the debut over this, but I'm also not, like I said, I'm not upset. I'm not upset by this because I like to see this band represented, and I'm perfectly okay with this being their representation, even if we never see whatever people say about me. That's not what I'm not.
Yeah. It's so funny because I feel like we've said that album title like several different ways.
A lot. I know. And we fucked it up every single time.
It's such an easy album title to fuck up. It's like one of those long ones. Another one that I feel the same way about is because I'm not even going to say it right now at all, is like when we all fall asleep, where do we go? Like that
fucking Billie Eilish.
When we fall asleep, where do we go? When we all fall asleep, where is it that we go? Like I'm just like,
yeah,
okay, just doesn't fucking matter.
Let's just talk about falling asleep. Fuck it, whatever.
Yes, exactly. But
all right,
should we go ahead and preview next week?
Let's do it, dude.
Okay, so picking it up next week at number 345, we have Bruce Springsteen, first entry. The Wild, The Innocent, and the E Street Shuffle.
At 344, we're going to talk about Toots and the Maytals, their album Funky Kingston.
343, we have Sly and the Family Stone, Greatest Hits. Pretty excited about that one.
Yeah, because most of their albums were fucking terrible, and so we had better just
we have to go with the greatest hits.
Yeah, you fucking cocksuckers.
That's right, yeah.
All right, 342. Listen, legitimately, despite what I just bullshittedly fucking harped on Sly and the Family Stone about, monumental entry at 342. 342. I can't wait to talk about this. The very first Beatles album that we see on this list, and that is their 1970 release, Let It Be. Fucking love that album.
Not what I expected as the lowest Beatles entry. Not what I expected at all. There may be a couple I would have expected, but it wasn't this one. I'll tell you that. So maybe it makes me question how many Beatles albums are actually going to be on here. We'll see. Yeah. 341 is the Smashing Pumpkins' Siamese Dream.
Yeah. So that's what we'll be going into next week. And JB and I talked about this a little bit at the top of the show before we went live. Good news is that at this point in time, every week we are getting some absolute fucking bangers, and you know, JB and I have both cheated a little bit looking ahead at the next few weeks. And man, the good part is that for the most part, every week, I think every week, hopefully from here on out, we're gonna have albums that we look at and we're like really, really excited to talk about, because we're getting into the real high water on this list.
That's right.
So,
and probably not this early, but at some point, Mike and I might decide that we want to slow things down a little bit and spend a little more time talking about albums. So once we start getting to the real fucking heavy hitters, we might decide, you know what, we're going to only do 3 this week, and then once we get to the top 50, we might decide we want to do 1, you know, or 2. Or
especially
something like
depending on the nature of the album, like what albums we're talking about. Absolutely. So we'll take our discretion, because as the show has gone on, we've certainly taken more time as we've ripped through 5 albums a week. And so we'll keep going at this pace for a while, but you know, I mean, fuck, dude, we're getting into the first Beatles album, and that's Let It Be is going to be a circle jerk, but fuck off. It's the Beatles. So just deal with it.
And then just a side little thought that I had that I meant to mention when we were talking about Jizza, and I forgot to. We were talking about all the Wu-Tang albums and how we were kind of debating a little bit about the order of those. I feel like at some point after we hit all the Wu-Tang albums on the list, we should do a bonus episode that's the Wu-Tang bonus, where we kind of go through and we talk about the order in which the Wu-Tang albums appeared on the list, and if we agree with it or what we think about that. So
I love that. Love that. And snubs, right? Like what individual Wu-Tang albums were snubs too.
We're left off.
There's definitely going to be some snubs, but
exactly.
All right, folks. Listen, thanks for tuning in. As always,
we love you. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
This list sucks. This list sucks. This list sucks. This list sucks. It sucks.
Goodbye.